Today, House Judiciary Republicans jump-started work on an immigration and border enforcement package. It's an uphill battle with resistance from both sides of the aisle. Earlier today, I spoke with U.S. Senator Ted Cruz on changes that he wants to see, and he didn't mince words. Senator, thank you very much for joining me, sir.
Greta, great to be with you.
Senator, I want to start with Title 42, something that was invoked during the Trump administration, continued into the Biden administration, which is an emergency public health that allows people coming across the border to immediately be sent back to Mexico. That's going to be lifted in May. I was just down in South America, and they all know about it. What are your thoughts about lifting that in May?
That Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and this administration have deliberately produced the worst crisis in illegal immigration in our nation's history. What's happening at our southern border, you know, Greta, it is an absolute disaster. It is a humanitarian catastrophe. It's a crime catastrophe. It is a drug catastrophe. It is a national security catastrophe. And this is deliberate. In 2.5 years with Biden as president, we've seen over 6 million illegal immigrants, the worst illegal immigration in the history of our country. And when you spend time down on the southern border, as I do frequently, you see the carnage, you see the suffering. When you sit down, you know, last night I was with the Texas Farm Bureau, about 300 farmers and ranchers from all across Texas. When you sit down with Texas farmers and ranchers over and over again, they pull out photographs of dead bodies they find on their farms and ranches, dead bodies of elderly people, of toddlers, of pregnant women that the cartels just abandoned to die in the elements. You know, a few weeks ago, we had Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas testifying before the Judiciary Committee. I asked him how many migrants have died trying to cross illegally into this country in the past year. He had no idea. The number is 853, but what does it tell you that the Biden Homeland Security Secretary doesn't know, doesn't care? I've been down on the Rio Grande River in a boat, and I've seen dead bodies floating in the water, and women are being sexually assaulted. Children are being physically and sexually assaulted. And this administration not only doesn't care, it's doing everything it can to make the problem worse.
Well, I was just down in Necoclí, which is the staging ground for the Darien Gap. It's in Colombia, and that's where everyone gathers. Right. And last month we were told there are 87 different nationalities there, but that even like the Chinese can't come into the United States because they can't get a visa, but they can fly to Ecuador. They don't need a visa to enter Ecuador, and then they come to Necoclí onto the Darien Gap into the United States. Is there any discussion with Ecuador to try to do something about their visa requirements in order to sort of stem that? Because once you get to the Darien Gap, you may not live.
Yeah. Look, there should be, and if this administration were remotely concerned about the lives they're destroying, about the national security risk they're creating, the administration would do something about it. This administration has no interest in it. You know, that same testimony with Alejandro Mayorkas, it was stunning. He refused to admit it was a crisis. He refused to admit that America was less safe. And I put up a poster board of a number of colored wristbands. I asked him, what are these wristbands? And I got to tell you, Greta, his answer astonished me. He said, I don't know. I have no idea. And I looked at him. I did not expect that answer. I looked at him and I said, Mr. Secretary, you've just told the American people you're utterly incompetent at your job. Because as you know, Greta, just about every illegal immigrant that comes into this country is wearing a colored wristbands. The cartels put it on them. For them, it's like tracking cargo. They don't view these as human beings. They view them as cargo. The colors correspond to how many thousands of dollars that they owe the cartels. And when you stand on the banks of the Rio Grande River, in the grass, you'll see hundreds or thousands of those colored wristbands just laying in the grass. The fact that Mayorkas didn't even know what they are shows how little interest he has in the job he's been given of securing the border. And I'll tell you one of the consequences of it. You know, you talked about Chinese nationals flying to Ecuador to cross up through Central and South America. You know, there is 100% operational control of the border on the south, on the southern side. The cartels have total control. If you want to cross into the border illegally, you try to do it yourself, the cartels will kill you. You can't do that. You must pay them. And under Joe Biden, what's happened to the cartels has been incredible. In 2018, the cartels made roughly $500 million from human trafficking. That's a lot of money. Last year, do you know how much they made? They made $13 billion, a 2,600% increase. Joe Biden becoming president is hands down the very best things that ever happened to the Mexican drug cartels.
All right. Well, you talk about those bracelets that I watched you barbecue Secretary Mayorkas about that when he didn't know what it was. I saw that poster when you questioned him in the Senate. But I would tell you, everybody at the staging ground, Nick Oakley knows about them because that's where they begin to get those bracelets. But I even spoke to a 16-year-old young boy or a young man, and he knew about them. They all know about it. So all you got to do is go to Nick Oakley, and which is sort of the beginning of this, and know this. And so, I mean, when you talked to Mayorkas, was there any interest in going to Colombia, talking to the Colombians about this staging ground, and figuring out, if there's any sort of effort to sort of, because they're going to die on the Darien Gap, or a lot of them.
Yeah, look, tragically, he doesn't view his job as stopping illegal immigration. He doesn't view his job as stopping the women from being sexually assaulted. He doesn't view his job as saving the kids from being horrifically brutalized. He views his job as expediting illegal immigration, making it more fast, more efficient, making it quicker and more effective. Everything he's doing is trying to turn the Border Patrol agency into the last mile of the human trafficking network. So he doesn't spend a moment of his day thinking about working on how do we reduce illegal immigration. He is trying to increase it. It is a political decision this White House has made that they view the 6 million illegal immigrants who've come into this country, they view all of them as future Democrat voters. It is cynical. It is political. And if people have to die, if 100,000 people have to die of drug overdoses, as happened last year, the vast majority of which was Chinese fentanyl flooding across the border, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and every single Senate Democrat, they don't care because they see a political benefit. So Mayorkas isn't trying to fix it. When he says at the hearing, he cares about the people who are dying. I pointed out to him, no, you don't, because if you cared, you would change the actions you're taking that are causing it, but you're not changing it. You're making the problem worse.
Should the House impeach Mayorkas?
Yes, absolutely yes. It's something I've called for loudly. And listen, the reason is important. As you know, impeachment under the Constitution takes a majority vote in the House. Republicans have a majority. If Republicans stand together, we'll impeach Mayorkas. Impeachment isn't the end of the process. It's, sadly, as the American people learned through two Trump impeachments, impeachment is bringing charges. It's the equivalent of an indictment in the criminal law context. Once Mayorkas is impeached, he would go to the Senate for a trial. To convict him and to remove him from office takes 2/3 of the Senate. I can tell you the odds that the Senate Democrats will vote to convict Mayorkas are 0.0%. He will not be convicted and removed from office. So why then is it worth an impeachment trial? The reason it's worth it is to put these facts before the American people, because if you watch Newsmax, if you watch Fox, you know what's happening at the border. But I'll tell you, if you watch CNN or ABC or NBC or CBS, you have no idea the people who are suffering and dying because the corrupt corporate media won't tell you. So the reason we should impeach Mayorkas is to let the American people know the absolute catastrophe that's unfolding on our southern border.